what I wanted to talk about today is, I think it's a kind of a common topic because I've seen lots of people talk about it and everything. And the topic is, how do you find an enlightened, a spiritually enlightened person? And I guess, logically, I would think, why is it you would want to find an enlightened person? And I guess the common answer would be, well, because you are seeking to become enlightened yourself, and so you want to find out what an enlightened person knows, excuse me, so that you could, like any teacher, you want to learn, if you want to learn how to do woodwork, you seek out a professional woodworker. If you want to learn how to be a medical doctor, you seek out training in becoming a doctor. You don't generally, not generally, you just simply would not go to a road building company and talk to a road builder about how to become a doctor. So we are under the false belief, and I mean all of us, everyone in the world, is under the false belief that you're going to find an enlightened person at the head of some sort of religious organization, some ashram, the leader of some sect of Hinduism, wherever it may be, it's going to be a person that is heavily involved in that sort of thing. And so they would seek out that particular person. And then logically, I guess you would follow the crowd, so to say, because there's examples of Jesus and crowds following him, and Buddha, the crowds following Buddha, and Krishna. Well, we don't know a heck of a lot about Krishna, but apparently there were people at the time that knew about him. But those are just examples that are written centuries after the death of these particular people. We don't really know for sure what took place during their lifetime, for sure. Well, anyways, so let me put this in perspective. And this is why, for the most part, you're never going to find an enlightened person. Because if you did find one, you would not recognize that person, even if you came across them. And I'll explain why. So, one reason why is an enlightened person is both spiritually enlightened and God enlightened, if you will. The only way they got that way, and the only way they maintain that, is by releasing themselves from the shackles of mankind that tie them down to a rigid system. Because all books, all organizations, all religions, all everything are written by man. Written by not the original enlightened person, not the whatever. And so over the centuries and millennia, everybody puts their 2 cents in worth, so to say, by altering this and altering that to fit their idea of what they think an enlightened person is like, or what an enlightened person should be. And of course they capitalize on that and raise themselves to prominence and power and authority by continually following the guidelines of history. So for instance, if this person follows all these guidelines in this particular religion, they can rise to the level of whatever it may be, and they can become so-called enlightened, or the authority of enlightenment is given to them by some other authority. They'll say, well, my guru was tutored under that guru, who was tutored under that guru, and the list goes on and on and on until they get to some guru that it's like, well, I have no idea how this guru knew. And so everyone past this original guru of 1,000 years ago, or whatever the case may be, has followed this line of succession to get to where they are today. And all of them are false. Now that's not to say there's any badness or whatever in people that claim to be enlightened, or for the most part they actually don't claim to be enlightened, but they do claim to have a great knowledge of the particular philosophy or the religion or the faith or the whatever the case may be. And they probably promise that they can get you enlightened or whatever the case may be. It's all based upon the history and how they tie together to prove that they have authority in what... I know I sound like I'm rambling, but I'm trying to explain how the world is never going to recognize a true enlightened person. Let's take Christianity, for instance. And so just picture in your mind, assuming, I don't care if you're Christian, I don't care what religion you are, but you know about Christianity and you kind of know what church is like. So assume you're in a Christian church and the congregation has got anywhere from 100 people to 5,000 people in the congregation. And they start the service and the pastor, the preacher, the whoever the leader is up there giving a talk and doing their normal thing. And then they go, okay, we're going to have a prayer, and they fold their hands and they say, dear Lord, blah, blah, this and blah, blah, that. And again, let's just assume the pastor is a wonderful person, wonderful heart. We're not going to say anything negative about them. Who knows what the reality is, but let's assume that they dedicate their life to feeding the poor and the hungry, and they don't do anything wrong in their life. They're just a great, wonderful, wonderful person. And so we're just going to assume that. And so they get done with their prayer and they say, we pray that you would guide us, dear God, to the truth and everything. So they get done with their prayer, and someone that is wearing somewhat disheveled clothing and doesn't appear to be, clearly not associated with anyone in the church whatsoever, saunters up the aisle toward the pulpit, and let's, for our sake, assume that this person that's sauntering up there has a direct link to Jesus, or let's say it's the reincarnated Jesus, or whatever the case may be, but this person is clearly enlightened. Now when I say clearly, this is under our assumption, is enlightened and has a direct link to God like Jesus did, or let's say it's Jesus. Either way, it doesn't really matter. But they saunter up to the pulpit and say, okay, well, you prayed and now I'm here and I will help you understand what you need to know. So you know darn good and well what's going to happen. They're going to have the elders and the leaders will physically take this person off the stand, probably call the police, have them arrested, or whatever the case may be. That's what's going to happen. especially when the person gets up there and starts talking. Let's say they don't get him off there right off the bat, and the person goes, "You're never going to get close to your Father in heaven by listening to these blowhards up here that are preaching stuff that they don't have any clue about what they don't understand the Bible. They don't understand what is written. They don't. Your good leaders here are they have their power and authority, but it doesn't do you any good because this just gives them power and authority. They don't even understand the scriptures that they say they worship and stuff." Well, even at that point, if it were to get that far, certainly they would drag that person's ass off of the church and call 911 and have them arrested. So, who in the congregation of the 500 or 5,000 is going to get out of their chair and walk up to the pulpit and go, "Oh, please help me understand what you know," and get down and kiss their feet, if you will, or whatever the case may be? Who in the congregation is going to do that? Especially knowing that the embarrassment would be phenomenal when you have these people that you've known for years. So there's peer pressure, there's that. And who is going to get out of their seat and go up there when clearly everybody is like, "Get this idiot out of here"? You see what I'm saying? So it's the same thing. If that's the way it is in a Christian church, it's the same way in every church. You could be in an ashram with a guru that is teaching you this, that, and everything else, and it's going to be just the opposition or the appalling difference between what you think your leading guru, what you think represents an enlightened person, and the real enlightened person that would usher the guru aside and say, "Well, you've been talking long enough, let me help these people understand what you've been trying to teach them for the last 10 years because you really don't know what you're talking about, you have your head up your butt." So if a person were to speak to the ashram or the group of people, it would be no difference. Who is going to get out of their postured position of acting like they are greatly enlightened and sitting there in the lotus position? Who's going to get up and embarrass the hell out of themselves and go up to this seemingly idiot and say, "Please teach me more"? Nobody's going to do that. And so that's what a true enlightened person is like. And I'll tell you why a true enlightened person is that way. Because they're not beholden to a scripture or a set of rules or anything. They have a direct link to God. They have a direct link to whatever it is you think, whatever the source of enlightenment is, whatever is in your mind that is the source of enlightenment, that's what they're linked to directly. And so they don't derive their power and authority from any recognizable source upon this reality, upon this earth. They're totally independent of everything. They're not going to follow the rules of anything, because once they do that, then they've perverted their true essence of what they are. They've perverted the path to enlightenment. They're not going to satisfy your ignorant idea of what enlightenment is just so that you will be happy and content. They don't give a shit what you think. They are enlightened and they follow the path to the direct link to God, or the direct link to the absolute, or whatever it is you think that this enlightenment is. That's what they are tied to. They're not tied to anything you think they're tied to. And if you think about the logic here, every single anomalous enlightened person, and we don't know how many there were since the beginning of time, but we do know of three, then that is Krishna, Buddha, and Christ. And all three of them were incredibly anomalous and uncommon amongst the general population. So why is it that you would think that nowadays, if there were an enlightened person, that you're going to recognize them any more than they didn't recognize them back then, per se? And for you to sit here and say, well, no, they did recognize them because here in the Bible. To hell with the Bible. That's just bullshit. That is crap that has been written hundreds, if not thousands of years past the death of that person. We have no clue what reality is. Again, you're referring to a book that has been perverted by even Jesus says the God of this world is Lucifer. So wouldn't that mean that all written books and everything that would guide you is going to be altered and controlled by this deity called Lucifer? Of course, that makes more sense because that's the God of this world. Now that's Christians' view, but that holds true for all of them. You are never going to know. And the reason you're never going to know is because you're tied to a rigid system of what you have been taught your entire life, and everyone is teaching you what an enlightened person is supposed to be and how they are supposed to act. And that is the person you're going to follow. You're never going to follow a truly enlightened person, because the truly enlightened person is never going to follow a dogmatic set of rules posted in some book, and they're not going to have any power or authority over them. No, it's impossible. Because if somebody physically or some organization physically is above them in power and authority, clearly they can't be enlightened. Otherwise the people above them would be enlightened. So they have to be a renegade, so to say. And until someone listens to them or whatever, or follows them or whatever, and then, like I said before in another video, a truly enlightened person would never have followers anyways, because they might, but if somebody wants to learn, they're just going to do it one-on-one, because they don't give a damn about followers. They don't give a damn about any of that kind of stuff, because they recognize that for the most part, followers are not ready to understand what enlightenment is in the first place. So again, getting back to, I mean absolutely no negativity towards spiritual teachers or anything of that nature, because everybody has to follow a path, and for the most part, unless they're molesting children or some crazy thing like that, for the most part they're just humans and they're doing the best they can, and they truly are good, sincere people for the most part, and they're just doing the best they know how. It's not their fault that, well, of course it is their fault, but it just is what it is. They're just trying, and as I've said before, you can learn from an unenlightened person, and that there's nothing wrong with that. But just don't get it in your mind that you're going to recognize an enlightened person, because once you do that, you pretty much eliminated the possibility of recognizing an enlightened person. As soon as you think you're going to recognize one, that's when you're going to never recognize one, because you have this preconceived notion of what you think an enlightened person is, or what a prophet is, or whatever it is you think it is. And of course the problem with that is, how do you distinguish the difference between an enlightened person and a complete crackpot? Because there are plenty of mentally ill people that go around telling you that they're enlightened, or that they're the reincarnated Jesus, or whatever the case may be. The world is scattered with people like that. But of course, in reality, you can do a background check on them to find out if they truly are mentally ill. I mean, it really doesn't take much effort on your part to do a little bit of background history check to find out if, for the past 10, 20 years, what is their life. It's not that difficult to discern, oh, okay, you really are mentally ill, you're not an enlightened person. So that's one way to find out. That's how you can discern the difference. But short of that, there's no way to discern the difference between a mentally ill, delusional person and a truly enlightened person. They're going to appear just about the same way. They're going to strike you the same way. They're going to be very, they're going to be very repulsive to you because you have a preconceived notion of what you think it's supposed to be. And they're never going to fulfill your delusional or your misguided idea of what you think they should be like. It's never going to happen. They don't give a shit what you think. You see what I'm saying? Now that's being very strongly worded, because they will love you and love you more than anything, because that's the way a truly enlightened person is. But they are going to be very harsh in many respects because you are very harsh. You don't think you're harsh. You think you're a loving person and everything. But you are very harsh. You don't realize that passively you are in opposition to a truly enlightened person. Just like I said in the congregation of the church, if the real Jesus were to walk up semi-disheveled or whatever to the top of the pulpit, and you call 911 to get him away or whatever, you are incredibly passively aggressive toward the God you profess to worship. Do you see how that works? And of course, the Christ that would maybe be walking up there and you call 911 on him, he's not going to be upset at you because he recognizes that's just the way reality is. People are never going to recognize a truly enlightened person. So I think I've carried on long enough, and I appreciate you watching this, and just take that into account in your lifetime, because I think it's very important to a rare few people who are truly seeking what cannot be found in this confusing world. Thank you for watching.